Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's installment of the Trenchless Technology webinar series. Today's presentation, sponsored by Azuria Water Solutions, is Stuck in the RFP Trenches. Learn how cooperative purchasing gets work done faster. My name is Mike Kesdy. I'm the managing editor for Trenchless Technology and Trenchless Technology Canada magazines, and I'm pleased to help facilitate today's webinar. We're going to take a quick poll, so please submit your answer and then click the Return to Presentation button. I'd like to take this time to remind everyone that any views or opinions presented in this webinar are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent those of Benjamin Media Inc., the publisher of Trenchless Technology magazine, nor does Benjamin Media Inc. endorse any products or methods presented. In today's educational session, we'll focus on how you can drive project efficiency with in situ form technologies, cooperative purchasing contracts available through purchasing partners such as Omnia Partners. The competitively solicited, publicly awarded cooperative contract is open to state and local governments, higher education institutions, K-12 schools, and nonprofits across the nation. By leveraging these contracts, you can eliminate the full RFP process, delivering time savings of more than 50% and cost savings of over 10%. I've moderated several webinars, and I will share to get the greatest value over the next 58 minutes, be interactive. By this, I suggest submitting your questions to the presenters throughout the presentation. We'll try to answer as many of the questions as we can online today, and anything not asked live will be addressed via email following the presentation. Today, we have Ryan McClellan, Vice President of Cooperative Purchasing for Azuria Water Solutions. Ryan brings more than 20 years of leadership experience with a proven record of driving transformational growth in cooperative purchasing. At Azuria Water Solutions, he leverages his expertise to help organizations streamline procurement and deliver greater value through innovative contracting solutions. Before joining Azuria, Ryan held leadership roles at Dynapack North America, Textron, and Ingersoll Rand, where he successfully guided high-performing commercial teams and accelerated growth across both public and private sectors. We also have Tammy Rhymes, MPA, the Executive Director of the National Cooperative Procurement Partners, North America's Association for Educational Content, Legislative Advocacy, and Support for Cooperative Procurement. She also formerly served as purchasing agent for the City of San Diego, the U.S.'s 9th largest city, and emergency logistics chief during the 2007 Witch Creek fires. Under her leadership, the city consolidated its warehouse operations, centralized all purchasing and contracting operations, and moved to a more customer-focused approach. With past sales and marketing experience in the airline, retail, electrical utility, and wine industries, she has a unique perspective of working in three different worlds: corporate, government, and entrepreneurial. With that, I'll turn things over to Ryan.
Thank you, Mike, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. We have a big thank you for a shout out to Trenchless Technology magazine and Benjamin Media for making all this happen. When you think about this, think about it from this question. Have you ever been stuck in an RFP trench? No matter what side of the counter you've been on, there's no question the process is not only not that enjoyable, but it may not always be that efficient. And so our agencies that we serve go through the same process day in and day out. There is hope, however, and that hope is meet cooperative purchasing. Hi, I'm Ryan McClellan, Vice President of Azuria Water Solutions in Cooperative Procurement, and I'm excited to welcome you today. And I'm also excited to introduce to you Tammy Rhymes, who is our esteemed guest, who comes to us and will join our journey today from the National Cooperative Procurement Partners. So Tammy, maybe a little bit about yourself here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. And actually, NCPP, the National Cooperative Procurement Partners, is an association, and we're involved in a lot of educational content in both the U.S. and Canada. And what's unique about our membership, we're a 360 membership. So we have cooperative organizations, we have strategic suppliers who hold cooperative contracts, and then that last group, public procurement and government employees. And we have over 20,000 members in that last category. So a big part of our mission is training on both sides of the table for suppliers who sell to government, as well as government employees about cooperative procurement. We also are involved in legislative advocacy across the United States and collaboration on special projects. So NCPP is a resource for you with free educational projects. And I appreciate this opportunity to share a little bit more about this contracting tool that I also use as a former recovering purchasing agent.
That's awesome. So just this is a quick glimpse of what we'll cover today, and why don't we just jump in? So we are Azuria Water Solutions. Our company was founded in 1971. We created the cured in place pipe process, which is affectionately referred to as CIPP. We're based out of Chesterfield, Missouri from a headquarters perspective, and we have 150 plus locations with highly qualified, highly engaged team members who stand on the ready to support our customers on the daily basis. And in addition to that, you're talking about best-in-class project teams, field engineers, and then also don't forget our safety-minded crews who absolutely make it happen every single day. We know water, and we are ready. And so in addition to that, the portfolio of companies is listed there on the screen as well, but we continue to invest in this space. We are passionate about this space. And so these capabilities that we deliver to our customers create economic value at a level that is differentiated. But it's what sets Azuria Water Solutions apart each and every day as we go together into the market. So here's just a quick glimpse of some of the services we provide. And over on the left side of that screen, you'll see things that might resonate. Maybe there's a few things that might be new to you from a service and product perspective, but these are liners, you know, our Primus line, we've got our fusible PVC. Let's not forget the cathodic protection, our Wico seal, the Vilon slip lining, on and on and on from there. And so it's the most comprehensive and distinctive portfolio of products and services that we can offer. And the journey continues from there. We will continue that effort and do so with pride as we serve our customers out in the public agency space. So there's a lot of talk about gravity CIPP, but also let's not forget pressure CIPP. So on this side, you know, this is a part of our trenchless technology offering. This is reinforced 6-inch to 72-inch. Heat UV cured. I mean, it's you know, class 4, fully structured. This is also very, very valuable to our clients. And again, obviously trenchless. Then on this side of the house, so this is an EPA approved alternative to pipe bursting and open cut removal of asbestos cement. And so this is our close tolerance pipe slurification process. So what this does is we open this pit, we send a spinning head in that does an absolute grenade of the asbestos pipe and annihilates it. As it does that, it pulls in one of our fusible PVC pipes right behind it and creates this asbestos cement slurry in an open pit that gets vacuumed out and responsibly taken out to the local landfill and on from there. It's far less complicated in terms of just the overall time, the impact to the local community. It is where we feel like it's a lot less digging and disruption overall, and it's a better way to serve our customers in these areas. So very, very cool process. Close tolerance pipe slurification. So staying on the pressure side, so we have fusible PVC. This is our proprietary PVC formulation, which allows the fusion of joints. And so we string thousands and thousands of feet of this together. In fact, we've got over 20 million linear feet in service today, but this is 4-inch to 36-inch. You'll see this in horizontal directional drilling, of course, slip lining, pipe bursting. We've covered close tolerance pipe slurification, of course, that's in there. And we still do direct bury, of course. So lots of applications for this, an incredible, incredible product. So you probably came to learn more about cooperative purchasing. So let's get into that a little bit. So cooperative purchasing is a forward-looking solution. And you think about all the different procurement paths that these practitioners go through every single day. This is one option, of course, but this allows government agencies to leverage the collective buying power, and that creates an economy of scale that's of benefit. And we think about time savings and cost savings. This is definitely a cost savings, especially when it's nationally scaled like the ones we leverage. But essentially what this is this is a competitive solicitation that goes out and is competitively solicited and awarded through the arduous RFP process. This is a select lead agency that has signed up for this. This is our cooperative partner standing by our side as we go through the process of making sure all of that is done. They've done the hard work for the agencies. This is where the agencies don't fully grasp maybe that they don't have to do this each and every time. The hard work's already been done for them. So when it comes to cooperative purchasing, why does this matter anyway? You might be asking. Well, there's a couple of things as it relates to our industry specifically. So water infrastructure spending remains incredibly strong. I think we all would agree from an industry perspective, there's no shortage of compromised infrastructure out there that requires remediation and rehabilitation. So the spending is definitely there, and for good reason. And then when you couple that with the cooperative opportunity expanding, hey, look, this traditional RFP process has its place. It just can no longer keep pace with the demands of the aging infrastructure that's out there. It's daunting. And in addition to that, think about an RFP process if it required 4 to 5 months, right? So that's 4 to 5 months of an RFP process that has to go on. During that same period of time, the compromised infrastructure only gets worse, right? Due to the continued degradation of the infrastructure while the RFP process is going on, that adds more cost to these agencies. So it's not really the best way to serve the agency through the RFP process for multiple reasons, but definitely, namely, that's one of them. So there's a lot going on inside of that, but that's principally one of the biggest opportunities that cooperative can unlock.
Thanks, Ryan, for sharing that definition with everyone. But when I'm talking to supplier audiences, a lot of times they're listening and they're saying, show me the money slide. Well, here's the money slide right here. So a typical SLED business, and this is from state, local, and education, comes from multiple sources. And the next few slides are actually slides from GovWin by Deltek, and they've shared their data and survey work. So what we found is generally, the greatest amount of work does come through the traditional bid and RFP process, particularly with construction or any kind of installation services. But there's a lot of work that also comes through statewide contracts, subcontracting, and then the sole source or informal purchasing. And that's generally low dollar volume items. But that slice of the pie that you see here, the 11.3%, on average, that's what a company can bring in revenue from their government sales using a cooperative contract. With that said, this slide and this graph was created 3 years ago, and I am waiting for the latest update. So in between now, or between when this was published and now, every time I do a presentation for a supplier who holds one or multiple cooperative contracts, I always ask the question, so when you look at this chart, what is your sales piece of the pie through that? I have heard everywhere from 30% up to 90% of government sales coming through cooperative contracts for those companies that truly leverage. Next slide, Ryan. And this will show you the overall market size of national co-ops. And this is from 2015 to 2025 this year. And anybody would love to see a sales growth going in that directions. I will tell you it's jumping not only exponentially here in the US, but for those who sell into Canada, it's also gaining steam. Mostly in Canada, it's due because the trade agreements were updated in 2017. And for the first time in Canada, public entities can now start purchasing through cooperative procurement, and they are hungry for knowledge and contracts in that respect. Next slide, please. So as a purchasing person is approaching either a problem that needs to be solved for their entity, or they may have an existing contract that will soon appear, we sort of sit there on that line and decide which route are we going to go? Am I going to go out to bid, or am I going to choose the cooperative route? And these are the 4 compelling reasons why anybody would choose the cooperative route or piggyback on another contract. Well, the first is to save time, and Ryan just mentioned it. The bid process is a cumbersome process, and I admit that as well as a former purchasing agent. We have to take the solicitation, creating the solicitation in the first place takes on a tremendous amount of time. Then we have to advertise. We have to put it out on the street for a couple of months to allow suppliers enough time. Once those responses and questions start coming in, we have to answer those questions. We may issue an addendum. We finally get all the proposals or the bids, and now we have to evaluate them. Then there could be some negotiation time until we finally get to almost to the award. But wait, we now have to bring it before our city council or our board for approval. And sometimes that takes almost a month just to get it on the docket. So I will admit, as a purchasing person, that bid process is horrendous, but it is what we have set up in our current systems. So for me to have an already awarded contract that I can just piggyback upon and I can start buying products within a week, 2 weeks at the most, that is a tremendous advantage. Second is to save money. Because when a company goes and competes for a cooperative contract, they know that they're going to be serving multiple entities across a region or the nation. As such, they're going to sharpen their pencils, give us great pricing, but they also might add added value services, consulting, warranties, free delivery, all of that sort of things can be packaged in as well. Even the city of New York and the city of Los Angeles, the two largest cities in the nation, they use cooperative contracts for this very reason, even though they have tremendous buying power on their own. It's why any one of us joins Costco or Sam's Club or any of those warehouse buying, that warehouse pricing. And that's kind of what co-ops are about. The third one, and this is real important for all of you, because it's called proven solutions, but I say this is me choosing the supplier I want. So let's say my water department engineers have decided your company is the one they want to go with. Well, I can't very well put a bid on the street and say only this company may apply because your competitors are going to get a little upset. So what I can do is approach the company of choice and say, hey, my water department wants to use you. Is there any way you have a contract that I can piggyback upon? Could be a cooperative contract, could be a state contract, another agency contract, and then I'm going to look at that information. So if you have clients and customers who want to do business with you, this is a way they can reach you without having to go through the competitive process. And then last, and this really applies to your industry, is last minute emergencies. A pipe breaks, we have flooding, there's an estuary that now have sewage slud going into it. All of these require immediate action. And there's no way I would have time to go out to bid for that. Another sort of emergency situation is the end of the fiscal year. You may not realize this, but with local governments, we have to stay within budget. Unlike the feds, where they can run over, they can go into debt, local governments have to stay within their budget. And at the end of the fiscal year, that last month or two, departments are anxious to spend all of their money because they're going to lose it if they don't. They don't get to roll it over to the next year. They don't get to save it up. They will lose their money, so they're trying to spend it. Again, cooperative procurements can help in that last minute situation. Next slide, please.
Yeah, that's a great segue into.
If you want to, I was going to suggest, Ryan, you mentioned your awarded contracts because that's really helpful to this conversation.
Yeah, so true, isn't it? Yeah, so just a couple benefits here too. When you think about cooperative purchasing and just what Tammy just walked through, that's the data that speaks to it. Think about it as faster projects, right? Lower cost, yes, full compliance. This isn't just a thumb in the air hoping that you hit a few marks on the compliance. No, this thing has gone through a very strenuous process to be awarded. And so it's a reduced administrative burden, but why would you want the public agencies to duplicate a process that's already been done on their behalf and it's already been in compliance with all the statutes that it needs to kind of check off? In addition to that, the federal and state funding, the cooperative partners that we are locked into, federal and state funding is permitted. So that's a big play in terms of how things get funded and where cooperative purchasing can come in and simplify the process even with those funding sources. Hey, there's no denying, right? Agencies all the time put bids out and people don't bid, right? Companies decide for whatever compelling reason, they just won't bid it. And so those may have been to the point that Tammy brought up earlier about a pool of like great sources that are locally based. Like they may decide to not bid the thing. So now these agencies are left with less than qualified suppliers to do very, critical work to fix the infrastructure that's been compromised in some way. And so that's an inherent risk as well. But the other thing I would say is we are completely locked in with Omnia and Sourcewell now on the cooperative side. And the process that you go through to put a bid to respond to a solicitation through a lead agency is no small task. It takes a lot of work, but it's one that we respect and we admire tremendously, because what it does is it strains out all those respondents to a solicitation down to those that are the most qualified, the most capable, and the most engaged in that particular space. So for an agency to look at who has been awarded a contract, they know with complete confidence that those suppliers have already been completely vetted. And so that does a really good job with that. So we're proud to be partnering with Omnia partners as well as Sourcewell. And that's a great way to go forward. They're highly resourced, great partners overall. So tremendous amount of resources from an expertise perspective. But no cost to the agencies, national pricing, how can you lose, right? So yeah, a lot going on there.
So this next set of slides, I actually want to share some data. And this was a special project that was led by NCPP. So I do a lot of presenting across the country, and I have all kinds of audience. These are procurement or government audiences or supplier audiences. And invariably, I get somebody who raises their hand and asks this question. So how much does it cost on average to conduct your own bid or solicitation process? And there was no industry standard. I reached out to procurement organizations across the country, and while individual entities might have tracked their own costs, there really was no standard. Now, the cost I'm talking about are personnel costs. So the phone call comes in from the water department, or I, as a purchasing agent, sees an expiring contract on the horizon, and now I have to do something about that to put a new contract in place. So on that decision tree of going out to bid or going the cooperative route, there really was no money standard or data that I could use to make that decision. So NCPP decided to take the proverbial bull by the horns and do this project themselves. So we reached out to entities across the US and we asked, before you do that next RFP or bid, can you use our spreadsheet and track all the costs, not just procurement's costs, but all the costs from your subject matter experts, from the user departments, your evaluation team, if you have to send it to risk management or legal counsel, your board or council that needs to now review and approve it. We wanted soup to nuts from the beginning of the need all the way to the contract award. So these next slides I'm going to cover are the report's conclusions. So next slide, please. So the three stages that we wanted to track was first the initial stage and publication. That's getting it all together and packaged right before it goes out on the street. Then we have the open solicitation process. That's what you all are most familiar with because now it's been advertised. You pull it down, start asking the questions, going back and forth. And then finally, actually the last and the smallest part is the negotiation and award. We're almost into the home stretch when we hit that part of the process. But what was kind of eye-opening for me is demonstrated on the next slide. No matter where that spreadsheet came from, no matter what the project was, next slide, please, the longest step, look at that bar that's on the longest step. That's the development of the scope of work and specifications. That is the longest process, no matter who turned in a spreadsheet, no matter where it came from and what the project. And me, as a former purchasing agent, yeah, I sort of intrinsically knew that, but man, this really spelled it out. And I'll give you the reason why. Here's what typically happens when we have a need within a government office. And I'm pulling back the curtains a little bit to share with you what happens. So either the user department says to purchasing, you write the specifications of what we need. And they'll just say, give a high level. We need a utility cart. Well, I am purchasing. I know a little bit about a lot of stuff, but I don't know the in-depth. So there's this back and forth conversation with our user department to finally get a specification put together. Or worse, My customer department will go to the manufacturer's book, make a copy of it, and bring it to me and say, here you go, here's the specifications. And I look at it, they didn't even white out John Deere in the specifications. I can't put that out on the street. Kubota, Caterpillar, they're going to get a little upset about this. So this is a big, long process. And I know sometimes you've probably looked at an RFP or bid and go, what the heck do these specifications mean? I don't even know what they want. So it is kind of a messy sausage making process, but this truly showed you where the greatest amount of time, and this is where cooperative procurement really is a good way for procurement not to have to do this. The next slide was also kind of eye-opening because we took all those spreadsheets and then I didn't really want the cooperative industry or even my association to review. I really wanted arm's length. So we reached out to academia, and it happened to be a doctorate class in the University of Georgia, took all of these spreadsheets. But then they came back to me and said, Tammy, there's such a wide range of projects here. Is there any way we could organize these into non-complex and complex? So this is what we did. Non-complex is a simple commodity. Maybe it's a commodity with a little bit of installation services, delivery services, or it's a low dollar item. Complex would be more in your line of work. Construction's involved, high dollar volume, lots of other departments are involved. But what we found also is, depending on if it was complex or non-complex, shows you who's working on it. Non-complex, it pretty much stays within procurement. Think office supplies. Office supplies can be done by procurement. They really don't have to reach out to customer departments. So they spend most of their time. But the second it gets into complex, now everybody's involved. All the customer user departments, the engineers, the subject matter experts, all those folks. So this is part of what we're sharing to procurement. While yes, there's a load on procurement, there's also a big load on the other departments, and purchasing really isn't even part of their job, but they get pulled into this as part of the mix. So now the numbers. Next slide, please. So what we found is in the non-complex, remember this is the simple commodity buy, the personnel hours resulted, and this is on average, it could be higher, is over $1,600. So what I'm sharing with procurement folks is whatever you're buying, say it's a $4,000 lawnmower, you need to add almost $1,700 on top of that lawnmower because that was your time to put that out to bid and resolve it. Going to the more complex, which is more in this field that you all are in, it's over $17,000. Again, this is an average. It could be higher. But this is a way for procurement teams to start thinking about their time as money and not just go out to bid automatically. The next slide will go into even more detail. Maria Agrusa and her team at the County of Orange in California, one of the largest counties in the United States, they did their own study years before we did ours. And she wanted to know, so how much does it cost on average for me, the County of Orange? But she went even further because typically government contracts are put in place for 3 to 5 years. So she not only tracked the cost of that initial solicitation process, she tracked the cost of monitoring and updating that contract through the years, whether it was negotiations or getting the next insurance certificate for the upcoming year, all of the things that goes into contract management. And what she found, it was over $86,000 for one contract for Orange County. Now multiply that by all the contracts that Orange County might have. That's a lot of money. And so that's part of what we're sort of preaching to the procurement folks, to start thinking of your time and money. Next slide, please. So when you are introducing a cooperative contract, and I do mean introduce it every time you have it, when you're at a booth in an exhibit hall, have a sign with your cooperative contracts. When you're having conversations with anyone, mention your cooperative contracts. In any of the printed sales data that you have, mention it. Because here's what happened with procurement. A lot of times procurement is already knowledgeable about cooperative procurement. And they may even be very familiar with the two co-ops, Sourcewell and Omnia partners. So now you've already got them interested in knowing they could reach your services. So even on a bid, let's say they're not using the cooperative route, but they're going out to bid. In any bid documentation, at the very end, they always have this question. So is there anything else you'd like to add? That's where you add, we also have cooperative contracts, because me as a purchasing agent, I've sometimes had problems with bids. I've sometimes had a no bid situation, nobody bid. I might have you as my only bidder. I might just, or I might have a problem and have to just stop the bid. If you put in there cooperative contracts, I might just privately reach out to you and say, this is the route we're going now. So that's what I mean. However, with that said, you still need to sell you and your product first before you sell your cooperative contract. I've had suppliers come in and say, hey, we have this such and such cooperative, buy our stuff. And I look at them and say, I don't even know who you are or what you sell. First, sell me on you and your product. And now the cooperative contract is the way to get to you and your product. So that was sort of my words of advice about introducing the cooperative contract into the conversation. So the next slide. So maybe you're not that comfortable about the cooperative contracts, and you do, and there's two major ones that were suggested. Here is a resource for you. The NCPP reached out to procurement folks across the country and said, hey, before you piggyback on any cooperative contract, what are the questions that you ask? Do you have questions about the contract, about the cooperative, about the supplier? And we organized all of those questions into this roadmap to a cooperative procurement strategy. And it's downloadable on the NCPP website. There's a US version as well as a Canadian version, because they might ask different questions based on their laws and rules. But here's what you can expect to be asked. So I'll give you a first question I always ask. When does this contract expire? That's going to be my first question, because if you tell me it's next month, I may not piggyback upon it because I was looking to put a 3 or 5 year contract in place. But let's say it's something simple and it's a one and done. I'm just going to purchase something quickly. I may still use the contract. So there's some basic questions you can be pre-prepared to answer. In addition, the co-op should be lending you support as well. Before you even go out to meet with that entity, reach out to the co-op and say, hey, has this city or county already been purchasing through you? Maybe not our products, but other products from other awarded suppliers. They can not only answer that question and give you some of those sales volume dollars, so now you have more of a warm lead instead of a cold call, but they could also give you their member number, who's their main contact. All of this information is available through the co-op. So don't feel like you have to learn this all on your own. There are free resources available. Next slide, please. And then I want to take off my cooperative hat and kind of put on my purchasing agent hat and also just answer some basic questions about selling to government. And this is to counties, cities, townships, school districts, and higher ed. So here are a few nuances that I wanted to share. The first of all, is there such a thing called purchasing limits? Sometimes it's referred to as purchasing thresholds. So in any given government body, each individual or department's heads are given an authority for purchasing. Me, as purchasing agent for the city of San Diego, I had up to $1 million that I could purchase without asking anybody. Now, I could do that in my signature. Now, I still had to follow rules and regulations. I couldn't do willy-nilly, but I could buy up to $1 million. That would be important for you to know. However, maybe my park and rec manager, my water department, buyers, they may only be able to buy up to maybe 10,000. So when you're meeting with these folks, it's good to know what kind of purchasing power they actually have. Otherwise, if you're talking to someone that only has a $5,000 purchasing threshold and what you're trying to sell is $100K worth of stuff, you're going to need their boss or purchasing or somebody else who has authority in the room. So it's okay and it's polite to ask what their purchasing thresholds. You're working with government and everything is public information. So be sort of cognizant of that, because a lot of times I've seen very frustrated suppliers who thought the deal was done and they sold the customer department, but the customer department didn't even have that purchasing power. So now you're having to resell to purchasing or somebody higher up in the government food chain. The second big thing is fiscal year, and that's really important. I mentioned that local governments have to stay within our budgets. However, the fiscal year is really important. So on any given fiscal year, and it can be different for different entities, some of them are July 1st through June. Some are October through September. Some are run on the calendar year. If you have particularly for your bigger potential clients, you can quickly go on their website, pull up their budget document, which is public, and right at the top, it will tell you what their fiscal year is. Easy peasy. So let me use myself as an example. So mine was July 1st through June 30th. So on June 30th, I go home that night to cook dinner for my kids, and the budgets are done. We have no more money. The coffers are empty. We can't buy a thing. I go to bed, I wake up, I come into work, it's July 1st. Ding, 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 ding. Everybody has money in their budgets. It's full. Everybody has their full year budget ready to go. And boy, howdy, are they ready to spend. So a lot of that is bid preparation, RFP preparation time for procurement, but we're also looking for cooperative contracts. So the first quarter is a big starting out the spending quarter or issuing RFPs. Now we've got quarter two coming up. And this is something, again, I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit. At the halfway mark of the fiscal year, every department director has to go before our board or city council and report on how we're doing. So we're 50% of the year through. So pretty much our spend should also be at the 50% mark, or we've got some explaining to do. So some departments might speed up their spending or slow down their spending on that second quarter just to make sure that report goes smoothly. Now the third quarter, that is the biggest spending quarter based on Deltek data of all entities out there. That's when the bid and the RFP has finally got all those responses, or departments are seeing the fiscal year coming to an end on the horizon and they're like, I got to get this spent now, let's go. So third quarter is the most impactful spending quarter of any government. And then finally, we've got fourth quarter. Now a memo is coming out from purchasing. Hey, the end is near. You need to start getting your big orders in. And so we start ratcheting down. About 2 months out, we say anything above $1 million, you need to get to us now. Then it's $500,000. Then it's quarter. And we go down until the very last couple of weeks. So a tremendous amount of last minute spending. And that's where the cooperative procurement really comes into play in quarter four. So name dropping. Here's what I mean by this. This is not for you to tell them that you know the mayor and you went to high school together, or that you go to church with a local council member. That's not the name dropping I'm talking about. The name dropping I would like to hear is, Tammy, we're here meeting with the city of San Diego, but we also wanted to share we've done business with the city of Miami, city of Dallas, city of LA. So now I'm thinking, oh, my counterparts at those organizations have used you. I'm feeling safe, because procurement never likes to be in the newspaper. We want to feel safe. So if you share with me other entities who are successfully using your products and services, that makes me feel better. And you may even want to say, hey, I can make an introduction after this meeting or after this call to that person so you can ask them. Because we in public procurement, we talk to each other. We share RFPs. We share knowledge about suppliers. So this is the kind of name dropping you should do, particularly if it's somebody nearby within my state or of similar size. And then education, and this is a big part. I mentioned earlier, procurement knows a little bit about a lot of stuff, but I really relied on my supplier partners to educate me. If you know OSHA is going to pass a law that starts in January 1st of next year, let me know. It's not like purchasing gets a memo on these things. My suppliers were my best informers of what was coming up on the horizon or what I needed to know. It also helps me, if I decide to go out to bid, build a better bid. So I'm not going to use your specific specifications, but if you tell me stuff that's going on or things I should be cognizant about, it makes for a better RFP process for you in the end. And this last one, and this is just a special note because I've seen it backfire with folks who did not live in my area, but they flew in to meet with me. So if you don't live in the area where your client is, or you're having to travel to get there, right before your meeting, even the day before, do a quick Google search of what's going on with that entity. You can learn a lot. You can learn and see if the mayor just passed an initiative, if they have new sustainability laws. They now, maybe subcontracting with minority businesses is suddenly a big push. You need to work those last minute things you find out into the presentation to make it specific. You also need to find the bad stuff that's happened in that area. And I'll give you the perfect, maybe you're meeting with a school district and they had a school shooting the week before. It's something you kind of want to be sensitized to when you're meeting with them, to kind of just be careful. And the example I'll share with you is I had a gentleman, he was the name dropper, but not in the good way. He wanted a name drop about this one council member that he knew growing up, and this would be so important to that council member. Well, if he had done this little Google search, he would have found out that the FBI had descended on the city of San Diego council offices the day before and pulled 3 council members, including that gentleman, out in handcuffs, something regarding an alcohol license and a strip club, but they all got 3 hauled out. And while he was saying that, in my mind, I was thinking that council member's probably not so concerned about this issue right now. He's probably trying to make bail. So those are the things that you need to be sensitive to when you're meeting with government. And then finally, my next slide is to give you a little bit of homework and just things to look at. So the first thing is obviously expiring contracts is when procurement needs to get involved. And we generally are looking 3 to 6 months out, particularly in this field, because it is a little bit more complicated and a bid is going to take a little longer. But you are allowed to ask for this. Every single state in the nation has some kind of Public Information Act. So you can pull up who's the existing suppliers they already have under contract. You can get a copy of the contract. Now, they may redact some proprietary information, maybe some pricing information, but generally you can get a lot of this information. You want to make sure you're ahead of the curve on expiring contracts. The other thing is vendor registrations. Every single entity, particularly since COVID, has moved to more automation. And so they have something called a vendor registration program where suppliers can register to be aware of upcoming opportunities. Well, I rely on that a lot. If I have an upcoming, even if it's a simple bid, or maybe it's just a 3-quote process, I go to my vendor registration program to find those suppliers who are available. If you're not in my system, I'm probably not reaching out to you. So you need to make sure you register. And here's sort of the hard part. Every single entity has their own registration system. So me, City of San Diego, I have mine. County next door, they have theirs. 17 other cities within our jurisdiction, each of them have theirs. Then there were 23 water districts also within. So yes, you have to put in this information every single place. We don't share a database. With that said, it's pretty easy and mundane. You could literally sit and do Netflix binging at night, sit there and enter the same information over. It's mostly contact information, and expand as many categories as possible. Check every box that might apply to your services and your product line to make sure you get notification of any opportunities. And then I would also suggest you put at least 2 people in, yourself as the contact and maybe a peer, a supervisor, because I can't tell you how many times I was approached by a supplier that said, Tammy, I didn't get the email, it went to my spam, or I was on my honeymoon for 2 weeks. Is there any way you can lengthen the time so we can respond? So make sure at least 2 people are registered. Education for departments, many of you may not even be talking to purchasing. Maybe you're talking at the water or the sewer side of the house, and you're not even talking to purchasing. Help educate them in cooperative procurements, because a lot of times they're not trained in this. And so any information you can share, even downloaded from our NCPP website, we have a lot of generic agnostic materials on it that might help educate them. And then finally, part of that last minute research, if you see that they have some kind of social initiative, I mentioned subcontracting, minority disadvantaged business subcontracting. They may have sustainability issues. They may have some kind of initiatives they're trying to achieve. Work that in to what you're selling as well, because a lot of times you'll get their attention. I was told I had to purchase everything. In one day, the city council passed a new rule. I was told purchasing shall now always either buy 25% of recyclable product or product that can be recycled at end of life. I got no notification of this, and it was effective immediately. So any suppliers that came in and offered me a solution, I grabbed it because I had a 25% goal I had to make. So again, you can bring solutions that would help procurement. Next slide, please. Free resources at NCPP Association. This is one that's a quick and easy one. It's clearly a side-by-side comparison. You go the cooperative route or you go the bid route, and you can see all the boxes in the bid route. This is also an easy thing to hand to those customer departments to help explain what cooperative procurement is. So Ryan, I'll turn it back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tammy. And thank you, everybody, for participating today. It's been exciting as we take this journey through cooperative purchasing in respect to our industry and all that we serve inside of that process. Hopefully, you've gained a lot of insight, and we definitely appreciate your time and attention. Mike, we'll turn it back over to you for conclusion.
Great. Thanks, Ryan and Tammy, for your in-depth presentation today. I'd also like to thank all of our attendees for joining us, and thank you to Azuria Water Solutions for sponsoring this webinar. If you'd like to refer back to this webinar, you can do so at any time by visiting trenchlesstechnology.com/webinars and selecting today's webinar from the on-demand webinar section. It will be archived there for the next year. We encourage all of our attendees to take our exit survey that appears on your screen at the end of this webinar. The survey will help us improve our offerings as well as content for future webinars. The survey will only take a few minutes, and your participation is greatly appreciated. As a reminder, any views or opinions presented in this webinar are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent those of Benjamin Media, Inc., the publisher of Trenchless Technology magazine, nor does Benjamin Media, Inc. endorse any products or methods presented here today. Again, this concludes today's Trenchless Technology webinar. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Perfect. So long.